Hi, this is Vicki Webster. I noticed we had some questions about Lesson 6, so I thought we'd do a quick video demonstration together. This is Lesson 6, Beyond Word Linking and Collaborating. In this lesson, we'll discuss the following: tracking document edits, selecting the right markup mode, incorporating collaborators' edits, using threaded comments, using document access control, combining and comparing documents, and embedding and linking external data. So I'll go ahead and move this out of the way. I have already opened the file that we'll be using. It is Word 0602. And just to make sure that I leave this file unchanged, I'm going to go ahead and save at this point. Save it as something different. So I'll save a copy on my desktop. I can move it later. I'll put underscore work here and save. And let's talk about working collaboratively just for a moment. It's not unusual to have an arrangement where you have to share documents with other individuals. And so sometimes these documents may require that we get feedback from others or provide feedback to others. There's nothing like having 3, 4, or 5 people all working on the same document and making changes, not necessarily at the same time, but since it's on the same document, it feels a little bit as if it's at the same time. But Microsoft Word has a feature that really helps us with that called Track Changes. It's a very popular tool for some professors, so you may have that happen where you receive a document back from professors and they've asked you to make all these different changes. And so you get a document back looking about like you see here in front of you. And sometimes this can be kind of intimidating. So let's go ahead and look at this feature for just a moment. Now, track changes in Microsoft Word 2013 is different from track changes in 2010. There are some subtle differences, and one of those differences is the fact that we have different modes of viewing our markup. A markup is what happens when someone makes a change to our document. In 2013, officially we have 3 markup viewing modes. So for instance, we have simple markup. Now with simple markup, we can see that edits have taken place, but some content is hidden by default. With no markup, Microsoft Word is still tracking the changes, but it doesn't display the edits. What we see is what the eventual content would be only. And actually, let me, for just a moment, turn off my hidden characters, and I'll go back to review. Our third markup viewing mode would be all markup, which is probably the view we'll use the most today. And with all markup, we see every revision on screen at the same time. And this is what I think is the most intimidating view. Now with 2010's version of Microsoft Word, these viewing modes are slightly different than they are here, so don't let that throw you off. And the track changes are actually handled a bit differently than you'll notice with 2013. And if we had to, we could say that we have one more mode, which is the original version of our document. Notice this. This is what our, oops, I clicked it. Okay, this is what our original document officially looked like. So it's just kind of a little saved view for us. I'm going to go back to my all markup. And just to show you how this works, I'm going to type a brief. And you can say you can see when I add text to a document that has track changes on, Microsoft Word underlines it, colors it so that it stands out for the original author. And if I want to see who the original author is, I can go to File, and notice under Info, if I come over here to the right, I see here we have Sandy Ann is an original author, and Wally Holland, but it was last modified by me. So now that you see how it looks if we add text, you can see other places in the document where text was added. For instance, early, amusement park, and remain standing today, lent their DNA to the modern amusement park. If someone decided to delete something, notice there's a strike through the text. In addition, notice that although it's deleted, it's still here. That's because I have not chosen to accept the change. So I do have options. I can choose to accept or reject the changes suggested by the other editors of this document. And right now, I haven't made a decision one way or the other. Going between the different markup modes is really easy. For now, let's stay with the all markup mode. And let me go ahead and turn my show hide characters on for just a moment, although usually I find it quite annoying. But the textbook author suggests that we go ahead and delete the 2 page breaks that we have. Right now we see page 1 of 3. So I have 3 pages. Here's my first page. Here's my second page, which starts with pleasure gaining in popularity. And here's my third page, amusement parks in the 20th century. And so if I'm going to delete my page break, let me select it and hit delete. And believe it or not, it's marked as deleted text. And I'll select that and hit delete on my keyboard. And if I hover over it just a bit, marked as deleted. Now, if I change my viewing mode, review. Right now I'm on all markup. If I were to go to simple markup, notice that changes to page 2 of 2. So I can see it really did happen. But if I go back to all markup, I can still see that really it's just kind of prepared for deletion there. So this can get a bit confusing. Let's try something else while I have it here in, maybe I'll go to simple markup and that won't be quite as confusing. Now I'm going to add some words right here beneath pleasure gardens. So I'll hit enter maybe once and I'll type toward the modern world. So I am making changes to my document. And I think I'll give that a heading 1 style as your textbook author suggests. And I'll go through making changes. I'm not really seeing any evidence of those changes over here. Let me go to my review and all markup. Come here and see Vicki Webster formatted heading 1 a few seconds ago. So there are some differences between that simple markup and the all markup. Let's make another change. We're going to change pleasure gaining in popularity here. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Just meant to select it. I'm going to change that to a heading 2 so that it's demoted in importance. But was that change reflected? You wouldn't think so in the simple markup, but if I come back here to all markup, maybe you can see it. Maybe you can't. Well, yeah, you can't really see that one. So it takes a bit getting used to the way Microsoft Word handles the markup feature. Let's make another change here. Go back to my simple markup, which is a little less confusing. I'll go to page 2 and I'm going to add a caption here. So I'll go to references, and by the way, I just selected my photo here, and I'm going to insert caption, colon, and I'll say tilt a whirl. Click OK, and I'll go ahead and center that so it'll hopefully look a little better. And I'm going to group this together, so I'll select my photo, hold down my shift key on my keyboard, and now select the caption. And if I want to group these together so really Microsoft Word sees it as one object and not 2 objects, I'll go to Format, find my Arrange group, and then I'll choose Group. And so now notice it's one object and still 2. Go ahead and save my changes. And again, I've been making changes. No indication of that on simple markup. If I go to all markup, I can see Vicki Webster formatted the caption and centered it a few seconds ago. So sometimes changes are captured for Microsoft Word, and sometimes changes are not captured. It really depends on how Track Changes is operating, especially between 2010 and 2013. And I would not find it unusual if the textbook that you had didn't sometimes get that turned around, because that's often the case as we move between versions, that the textbook kind of has to catch up in a sense. So we can control the markup that we see. I guess that would be the gist of that exercise. Now we can also, and by the way, I can go through and accept some of these changes if I want to. For instance, these are comments over here to the right. I can right click and choose to delete my comments, or as I mentioned, I can go up here and choose to accept my changes. But let's say you're working with a document that is a pretty good length. For instance, something like a thesis or a dissertation can be 100 pages or 200 pages, or something like that. The reports that you'll be doing as an MBA student can be 20, 30, 40 pages sometimes. And so going page by page, paragraph by paragraph, well, that can be a bit problematic. It's easy to get confused, but that's not the only way that we can handle our markup. We can also open up a reviewing pane under the Review tab and in the Tracking group. The reviewing pane, I can widen that a bit. And this is another way of handling your revisions. Notice it specifies how many revisions you have, and you can adjust that to get additional information. For instance, there were 31 insertions, 26 deletions, 9 formatting changes, 3 comments. And I can choose to make changes over here. For instance, I'm going to scroll down a bit. I'm looking for lent their DNA. There it is. I can right click and choose from that shortcut or context sensitive menu to accept that change. And I can make all kinds of changes here in my revisions pane without having to come to my my document. Let's see. We also have another one. Maybe Wally delete it. Let's see. Yeah, played apart. I can go ahead and accept that. I also could have chosen accept here from my changes group under the Review tab. And many more things that we could make changes to. When we use the accept changes button, we're basically saying, you know what, we'll accept these edits into our document's baseline, so that now this is a part of our document's original state, the state we started with when we first opened our document for this exercise. And typically this works best if there's one person. If you have several classmates with you working on the same document, typically this works better if you have only one person accepting and rejecting all of the changes, because if you get 20 different people making changes and doing these kinds of things, it can become kind of problematic. Someone eventually doesn't remember, well, who made that change and why is this different? And so you have one person who goes back, looks at everything, and kind of gathers a consensus and says, well, I'm deciding we're gonna, well, hopefully we all agree that I can make this change, I can make that change. And so someone takes responsibility for the entire document as the official author. All right, let's see. We're going to go ahead and close our revisions pane. And we can go to the very first part of our document. And starting right here, if I wanted to, I can go to review in my changes group and say, you know what, I accept that. And notice now early doesn't have the underline or the coloring anymore, so it's no longer now treated as a change. Now it's as if it's a part of the original document. And the next thing is now highlighted, and I can choose to accept that as well. And I can continue doing this throughout the document if I need to. think I'll come on down and maybe I'll accept some more changes. Let's see what's next. Oh, the picture is next. Maybe I'll accept that beginning. And let's see, possible topics for elaboration. I think that's the next thing highlighted here. Nope. Here's the next thing highlighted. I'll go ahead and accept that change. And I'll accept that change had. And now we're down to possible topics for elaboration. And let's say this change, instead of accepting like I did all the others, this time perhaps I think Wally's gone a bit too far. And I'm going to say, you know what, Wally? Thanks for the suggestion. No time now. And so you can see my reply to Wally. And you know what? If that's it for me, I can right click this and choose Mark Comment Done. So that topic's closed. Mark Comment Done. Now right now I'm on all markup. Let's see how this is handled if I go to simple markup. So notice all of my, well no, there's another comment down here. So you can see some things disappeared, but I can still see my my comments. Come back to all markup. So Word 2013 treats document review a bit differently than it did in Word 2010. To continue with this topic of comments and conversations, let's go down here to Oktoberfest. And now what I'll do is I'm going to say, you know what, I'm not certain about that spelling, but instead of making a change myself, I'm going to say I want a new comment so that the next person who gets this takes a look at it. So I'll say English spelling. No changes, I just want to add a comment. And with this picture, perhaps I'm not impressed with it. So I'm going to select the picture and choose to add a comment. And notice Microsoft Word, my version, moves my comment placement, but I'm still going to add it. A classier image. And so now I have that comment as well. If I change my mind later and you know what, I think I'm okay with that, I can reply to my comment and say, well, you know, it fits the document tone. So I've decided I can live with it. Now we can also prevent or restrict editing on this document. If you look in the Protect group, we can restrict editing. I can click that. And notice I can limit formatting to a selection of styles. So if you click Settings and choose Styles, we can put a check mark next to those styles that we are willing to allow. We can even get so specific that we can say they can use some table styles in this document and some others they can't. We can block theme or scheme switching. And believe it or not, this isn't nearly as uncommon as you would think. You go to some companies and you have to keep a certain theme. They can they can definitely check that so that you keep their company branding scheme. I'm going to cancel because we don't want to be that restricted. We can allow this type of editing. Notice there are things we can say we will permit, things that we won't permit. Kind of similar to the protections that we see in, I guess, in Microsoft Excel, but not nearly as extreme. I guess it is still extreme, but you have fewer options, but you can restrict editing on your document. Another pretty nice feature, if you have several versions of your document, you can compare them, and this is something that I like. So I can go to, so if we want to compare documents, I'm going to leave the current document that I have open. Notice that under review we have a compare group, and I'm going to choose my first option. Notice we have two. We can compare or we can combine. Let's start with compare. And I'm going to open another document. We'll say that our original document is another Word file that we have. I like to use OneDrive so that I have access to my documents whether I'm at work or at home. Right now I'm at work. And I'll do Word Lesson 6. Where is my file? There it is, Word 0604. This should be attached to your homework link, by the way. And I'm going to say that that is my original document. And in the right hand, I'm going to say that the current document that I'm working on is, and actually, yeah, I'll keep this one. I'll say that the document that I'm working on is the one I want to compare it to. Now this more or less button expands. You want to make sure that you see all of these options, and you want to also make certain that you've selected Show Changes in New Document. Click OK. One or both of the compared documents contain track changes. For the purposes of the comparison, Word will consider these changes to have been accepted. Do we want to continue? Yes. And notice Microsoft Word made some adjustments. It's thinking about it. I'm going to, well, I think it's still thinking about it. At some point, I should get an extra page that shows me the compared documents. There's my Word document. Now sometimes this comparison document will pop up. If it doesn't, you can always choose Compare, Show Source Documents, and Show Both. And I'll close this revisions pane so that we don't see it also. And now notice you can see the original document, which is that Word 0604, and we see the revised document. And now we can scroll and we can see changes. And now we can see changes in both documents. So for instance, the book brings our attention to something in the Pleasure Gardens paragraph. I see parentheses here. And if I go to the original document, let's see, amusement parks with Pleasure Gardens, I can see parentheses here, but no parentheses here in the revised document. So I think that the textbook actually flipped that. But you can tell when the changes emerged would be the most important part of this. If we can see all of the documents involved. So this is actually pretty cool. I like to compare sometimes my version of code to a student's version of code or something like that. So you can find pretty good uses for a tool like this. Now very similar to compare, we have combine, which works really essentially in a very similar manner. I'm going to close that compared document. And here are my compare results. I'm going to close that too. And for now, I'll leave that Word 0602 open. And this time I want to try combine. And for my original document, I'm going to choose the same one I chose just a minute ago. So let me go out here to my folder. And in my revised document, I'm going to choose the one that I'm working on. And I'll click OK. Word can store only one set of formatting changes in the final merged document. Choose which set of formatting changes to keep. I'm going to say to keep the formatting changes from my Word 0604 document and continue with the merge. So if Microsoft Word is combining, it's merging. And again, I can come down here and choose to show both. And now notice this says combine results instead of the compare results. And here is the combined document. We can see the changes throughout again. Let's see. Notice in this one it says seasonal celebrations, whereas here it now says festivals and celebrations. That was inserted. And let me close my revisions pane again. So comparing and combining documents, nice feature. Now we can move on to something entirely different for just a moment. So I'm going to close out of all of my Word documents, but I'm going to leave Word open. And by the way, you should be saving your changes. I didn't save mine because, well, apparently I was just being reckless. But you should save changes and give me your changed document. You don't have to give me any documents that you don't make changes to. And now I'm going to open Word 0603, and you can't tell, but this is actually a Microsoft Word. Oops, not Word. This is a Microsoft Excel workbook or worksheet. The icon is slightly hidden there, but I'm going to open that. Because the next thing we're going to talk about is embedding and linking objects. And this is really cool. What I can basically do is I can import tables from Microsoft Access into Microsoft Word, or I can import worksheet data from Microsoft Excel into Microsoft Word. The book gives you a really nice example of doing something like that. And this is something I use quite frequently. For instance, if I have addresses or something out in a Microsoft Access database, I can pull that from Microsoft Access into Microsoft Excel to clean up. And then if I want to, I can import it into Microsoft Outlook and have that saved as a list that I can now print onto labels. So there's a lot of interoperability between Microsoft Word applications that can come in really handy for us. So I've opened this file. Let's select our our Excel spreadsheet data. And so I've selected that. And I'll go ahead and copy. And I'll go to my blank Word document here. And I'll choose, alright, I'm going to right click. And I'm going to choose my paste options. And I want to choose link and keep source formatting. So now that I have that, notice I can make any changes that I'd like to. I still have the Word functionality. But right now I'm going to right click and let's see if I can get right here in my document. Yeah, you have to make sure that you right click in the right place, because notice that first I right click down here and I didn't see the option that I was looking for. I come here and right click, and this is what I'm looking for, these two options, update link and linked worksheet object. So if I want to just view it in a read-only format, I choose open link, and notice I come right here, but making changes wouldn't do me any good because all I did was open it. And so I can go back and I can right click, this time linked worksheet object, and I can choose to edit link. And it looks the same, but this one gives me more flexibility. So now I'll change this to 350. And notice that the change is reflected here. Now the change is not immediately reflected here, but I can do this. I can right click and now choose update link. Now I see my change. So think of how handy that is, especially when you talk about using larger worksheets, and you'll definitely see some bigger worksheets. And I still have the functionality of working in Microsoft Word. So later, if I wanted to come and change the look of my table, I could certainly do that. And I still have my update link and my linked worksheet object features. And that is it for lesson 6. Thank you.